Alright, so we're going to pick up where we left off with the gearbox plate. Um, so we can see what we have here, just the plate. I went ahead and saved it, and we're going to actually start doing some assembly to be able to see how things are fitting together. So, just going to go ahead and make a new assembly. Place in, files, gearbox plate. Place in one of them. I almost forgot to ground it. We gotta make sure the first thing is grounded. Not necessarily the first thing, but at least one. We're gonna place in a bearing for that hole, and then we're gonna need a couple different a couple of Falcons, Falcon 500s. Let's take a second to load. So one thing with gearbox plates is they can be made out of a lot of different materials. I'm kind of a fan of doing a plastic just because it's kind of abnormal. But if you do a plastic, you have to worry about things like the motor heat and flexibility. So a lot of people do aluminum. But for now, I'm just going to set it to polycarbonate. That way we can see better for this assembly and everything else. We can always change it back to aluminum or anything like that. But for now, there we go, polycarbonate. I'm going to start with just these three things, get them constrained, and then we'll move on to the next step. So for your bearing, you can go in either way. This is, real fast, this is what I like about polycarbonate, is you can see through it and you can select faces through it. So it's nice to have things set to polycarbonate even if it's not actually going to be polycarbonate, just to be able to do that. One thought we want to maintain when doing this gearbox is how is everything going to maintain itself? Like if I put that bearing on the other way, like would it stay as well as if it was here? No. So we put it to where the flange is on the inside and it's going to be clamped with the bolts that hold the whole thing together. There's that to that. Vex gives us these weird little set screws, but I find instead of actually going in and deleting the set screws that or the plugs is basically what it is, we'll just constrain to them and it'll be fine. In real life, we take the plugs out though. Worth noting, there are a lot of different things you can do with gearboxes. After I do this, I'll switch over to the current chassis design, and we can talk a little bit about what I did with the gearboxes that are in there versus these. One thing you can note is you can see these are not in line with this, right? They're up above it. That creates a shorter profile long ways, but a taller profile. Where if we go over here, these gearboxes, I did everything in line to where it's a nice short profile, but it is a little bit longer, and that can cause issues sometimes. And you can see I did the bearing just the same way, Falcons just the same, but yeah. Now that I've shown y'all that, we can place 84 tooth, and then we'll need 2 of the 9 tooth pinions. So we're actually going to constrain the pinions on first. Let's see if I can get in here and grab that edge. Looks good. And I like to constrain actually off of this face just because that's how it'll be in real life. So we'll just set it to, yeah, point, what, 375? That'll work. We might end up changing that number, and I'll show y'all what I'm going to do to where we can make sure the two stay together. So I could constrain this just like I did the other one, but instead, because I don't want to have to change 2 dimensions if I have to change it here in a minute, I'm just going to do these 2 flush together, where if I change that dimension on this one automatically adjusts to whatever that one is. I like to do that for some things, not all. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's just a workflow change. That's what that would be writing on. So it's perfectly fine to have it writing just like that. And that's actually what we're going to run with. I think in my other gearbox I have designed, I had a little spacer there. Actually, no, I ran it just like that. Perfect. But yeah, because VexPro gives you that little lip there, there's no need for a spacer like we were talking about with our pulleys. So, but what we can see is this gearbox has some issues. Somehow, we ended up messing up on our center-to-center distance, so we can evaluate that real fast. If we come over here, the distance from here to here is 2.347, and if we come back over to gearbox plate, I'm gonna bet we just had a simple mistake. 2.347. Ah, yeah. You see, I did that between that gap, so that is not what we want to do. We want a dimension from here to here. Okay. So we're just gonna do 2.347 times 2. Because I have these, that's not going to work. Okay, so you can see kind of some of the issues you can run into. So I exited out of my dimension tool. We're just going to do some live problem solving here. So that 347 times 2. Okay. Let's see if we can get this right now. 2.347 times 2. Enter. Okay, so that shrunk it down a little bit. And yeah, we can come in and I don't know what I wanted. Change this dimension. We're gonna go with 2 inches now, rather than that 1.5, and that'll actually allow us to shave some distance off. So there's some material off the sides. So finish that. We can see that they popped in better. And we can come back over to our assembly. Like I said, move one thing, things pop in. That means we can actually spread out these holes and do better. That did a lot of good for us, actually. It's good that we discovered that. But we can see now that our gears are meshing nicely. It looks good. But that's not good tooth engagement. We need to move that pinion back. And that is why we did that dimension the way we did. I'm going to say, what, 0.2? That looks good. We could even deal with moving it back a little bit further. I'm just going to leave it at that for now. Out of curiosity, what happens if we just ran on that face? That could even work. So we would just need to put the thinnest spacer that Vex gives you and be just fine. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Before we move too far, we'll just save it as the gear box. All looks good. Then what we're going to need to do is make some spacer blocks. But first, now that we have the extra room, we can play with this plate a little bit more and change our mounting holes up. So that should be this hole here. We can just write into this sketch and play with them just a little bit. Let's see. We change this to probably a 0.51. Out of curiosity, let's see how that hole looks when it's actually up next to the motor. So I would say that's a little bit too close to the motor, so I am going to go in and make a change there. And knock this back down to 0.375, and then leave it just like that. everything matches, looks good. Head back over to gearbox. That looks very boltable to me. And now that we have this profile, we can go ahead and make a little spacer block that can go in between this and our drive rail and allow us to stand the gearbox plate off. For demonstration, what I'm talking about is that little piece right there that holds it off. We're actually making this gearbox that it doesn't need this little 16th inch piece here to hold everything together. You can just do it straight to the drive rail and be just fine. So to do that, it's going to be another new part. Start a 2D sketch here. And if we didn't want to go directly to the drive rail, that we don't have to. That's just the way I like doing it. It's going to be the lowest profile. And if we already have a nice structural piece of aluminum there, why not utilize it? So what I did is I just made a 0.75 by 2 inch rectangle. We can go ahead and extrude that. I'm going to start with 1 inch. That's fine. We can come back over here to gearbox and we can measure a little bit. So our minimum distance we need is actually 1.12. So we're just going to make them 1.125. That way we don't have any kind of grinding or anything. I'm going to do 1.2 in case you want to put the screw in the end of the Falcon shaft. This year we found that the press fit worked fine and we didn't end up running that screw and everything worked out. But you don't want to chance it really. So I have that, and then we can start a 2D sketch here. And we can do the same kind of a profile we did on our actual block, right? So we want to be centered, so half of 0.75 is 0.375. We came up by 0.375, and then we had an inch in between these. Correct me if I'm wrong. Gotta center that guy up. That all looks good. A good test to see if you've done everything is just grab the point and try and move it, and if it doesn't move, you've got enough dimensions. If it moves, keep on going. Now we can finish the sketch and do a hole there. Not 0.25, it is a 1/4 inch bolt. I'm actually going to go a little bit oversized because this block will end up being 3D printed. At least that's the way I like to do it. Technically you could machine it out of something, but we have 3D printers, you might as well use them. Make a 3D printed block, not that hard. I found that 0.27 works well and isn't too big. It's just to allow for the shrinkage in the plastic. Now we're just going to make it look better by doing some rounded corners. Rounded corners always look good. I'm not going to round these or these simply because I want as much surface area as possible, and it'll be up against 2 flat surfaces, so there's no point in rounding them. I'm actually going to change the radius of my fillet to 0.25 and give it a little bit more roundness there. And then we can save this as, we'll just call it spacer. Or we'll call it gearbox spacer. Let's go ahead and place a couple of these gearbox spacers, get them added into the mix, and then other than a shaft, this gearbox is close to done. So this is the last thing I'm going to do for this video, and then on the next one we will get them mounted to the chassis. So that means we'll be changing the mounting holes that are on the drive rails right now, and we will get it all mounted up. That'll kind of wind up the gearbox series. Let me know what y'all want me to make tutorials for. I'll probably touch on some cam stuff and fusion, like how to get parts ready to machine. But I'm willing to do whatever y'all want. Just let me know. That'll do it for this video. Thanks for watching. I guess as well, in next video, we'll end up trimming off a lot of this gearbox plate, because from here up, it's unnecessary, so we'll do some nice round trims and get everything nice and looking good. Thank you.